bad.
What's up? I'm back. Ricky Varandas, Ripple Effect Podcast. This podcast is with James Perloff. The last time he was on was episode 39. He's a historian, author, researcher. It was a long time ago. He came on to talk about his book, Truth is a Lonely Warrior. This time he's on to talk about his new book, COVID-19 and the Agendas to Come. It was a great conversation, but it was recorded before my 4th of July little weekend getaway with the family, which was much needed. I really felt like around the time I was recording this podcast and the next podcast, because I didn't have time to release these shows before the 4th of July little vacation, I was really worn out. I mean, it's hard to balance everything out. I'm constantly in this balancing act of trying to do as much as I can on my limited time on this earth. I'm trying to find time for my friends, family, go to the gym at least 3-4 times a week, play basketball a couple of times a week, play soccer, find the time and energy to play with my kids, do all my work stuff, do the podcast. Obviously, all the things that I'm sure many of you guys have to balance in your own lives. To do it all and do it all often and every day in a good mood with lots of energy requires some sleep, requires some nutrition, requires some mental discipline. And it was all kind of wearing on me a little bit. I just needed to hit the reset button. I feel like I was either struggling to handle the chaos and all the stresses of everyday life again, or life has just gotten a little crazier than it was. I don't know. But either way, I needed a reset button, and it was nice to get away to New Hampshire. We went to Hampton Beach for a weekend. It was fun. I mean, the weather sucked, but we made the most of it. We had some friends come meet up with us. We drank, we hung out. I got away from thinking about work or the podcast or anything else besides just enjoying the present moment with my friends and family, which I think is really important. You need that. But to make a long story short, this podcast with James Perloff and the next podcast with Dr. Carrie Madej was recorded prior to the 4th of July, prior to my little weekend getaway. And sometimes I don't know if I'm just critiquing myself more harsh than I should, but I feel like the last couple episodes, or for at least a couple weeks now, there's been a lot of episodes where I just kind of felt like I wasn't myself, like I had some brain fog, or I was just so scatterbrained. And I know that's kind of typical for me, but more scatterbrained than usual. So I'm really excited about kind of getting back at it. I have a bunch of shows scheduled in the next couple weeks that I'm really excited about, and I feel better physically and mentally, and I feel like I'm better prepared for podcasts, and when I do them, to be focused on the conversation and the guests and the topic at hand and all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, when you do these shows, sometimes you pick up every little flaw or every little mess up. And I say little mess up like I only have little mess ups. I know I probably have many mess ups, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in all our lives that does have effect on your ability to hold a conversation and to be focused and to have the energy required to really spark and have a really awesome conversation. So I do my best, but obviously, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that happens in my life. And again, I know you guys can relate to this because I've been hit up by many of you guys throughout the years talking about how you can relate to me because I am the average Joe. I have a full-time job. I have kids. I deal with the everyday priorities and stresses that everybody else deals with. As you guys know, those things do get in the way of our mood and our focus and our energy levels and all that stuff. So I'm doing my best with what I have. And again, I'm crossing my fingers. Eventually, I will be able to do this full time. I'm not there yet. I'm very far from there. But people are helping out by buying merch, for example. the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com has tons of new products with the new Hulk Smash Ripple logo. It looks awesome. I'm really excited about getting my t-shirts in to see what it looks like. Check out the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. We have tons of new stuff on there. That's one way of supporting the show. Of course, this is a value for value show. We also have a Patreon page if you want to support us on Patreon. I have a PayPal account if you want to tip the show. I also have a Rockfin channel, which is a YouTube alternative. They stream stuff. They have tons of videos at the video platform. You make a free account, you get everybody's free content, which many of us have tons of free content on there. And then if you pay monthly, I think it's $9.99 or something like that. It's under $10. You get everybody's exclusive content, premium content. So people like Jimmy Dore, Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, Truthzilla, Whitney Webb, Last American Vagabond, Lee Camp, Abby Martin, The Propaganda Report. There's tons of great content creators on there that I'm sure you're familiar with and you're a fan of. So that's another great way of supporting content creators. Go check it out, rockfin.com. All this stuff will be in the show description. We also have a Rockfin channel for my other show, The Union of the Unwanted, which is now only exclusively streaming on Rockfin, and that's because YouTube keeps censoring us. Our last 2 episodes are not available on YouTube, so please subscribe to our RSS feed on any podcast app you listen to us. That's probably one of the best ways of listening to the Ripple Effect Podcast or the Union episodes is subscribing to our RSS feed. It seems like the audio feeds have less censorship issues than the video platforms, but they're still available on Rockfin. Check out those videos on Rockfin. I know the Union of the Unwanted has a lot of different people on the show. It's a big conference call with alternative media researchers and thinkers. So sometimes it's nice to put faces to the voices. So you can still find the videos on Rockfin and on Odyssey. And then same thing with the Ripple Effect Podcast. All my shows, minus a couple, are still on YouTube, and I'll still upload onto YouTube. But you can always find them on Odyssey, Float, BitChute, all the other video platforms, Rockfin. So please also subscribe to us on those platforms. All this stuff will be in the show description. The unionoftheunwanted.com will give you all the links to the Union podcast, RSS feed, merch store, Twitter account, Instagram, all that stuff. And I think that's it, guys. Enjoy this conversation, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.
I believe in the ripple effect.
What's up, James? You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. How about you?
Awesome. You sound like you're coming in clear.
Good.
Great. Well, thanks for being with me. And I know that you've had a couple hiccups in your health and stuff like that. Hopefully you're feeling well and you're doing well.
I'm doing okay. Yeah. This is actually my first podcast since March.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I heard you on what was it? How to Kill a Sacred Cow podcast. Actually, another guy from Massachusetts, and
Right.
I was just interviewed on that show recently too. And then I remembered that you were on there on episode, I believe, 21. But yeah, I'm glad you're healthy enough to do this. Hopefully everything's going well. Hopefully some of the knowledge you've retrieved all these years of looking at alternative perspectives to things will help. I know that there's a lot of good natural remedies out there, and just trying to stay away from the preservatives in our food and the GMO and all that stuff, pesticides. I'm sure it definitely can't hurt, right?
Oh, you mean glyphosate's bad for you? No. I've been using naturopathic, but also an allopathic approach as well, which seems to be helping. So yeah, I'm aware of many of the naturopathic approaches, and definitely. So many podcasts I've been on have been sponsored by natural health products. No question. I've had familiarity from that, and I've dealt with illness before and researched these things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good to hear. And with the health issues and with 2020, has this given you at least, I mean, the bright side, to be optimistic, it's given you a little bit more time to write? Maybe you're stuck at home, maybe you're doing a little
we're kind of stuck at home with this lockdown anyway until Charlie Baker lifted it. No, I've been kind of distracted by it more than anything else, and I have done a little writing. I did have one short blog post out recently. I'm working on another one now. but it did kind of waylay me for a while.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you remember, but I'm also from Massachusetts. I'm
Of
from,
course, yeah, yeah,
and I think, well, actually, I saw you in Hartford at the 2019 Red Pill Expo. We ran into each.
right,
I think we crossed paths and we
yeah,
chatted a little bit. But yeah, I mean, living in Massachusetts and throughout this whole 2020, constantly, talking to people all over the world and all over the country. One thing I learned a lot from 2020 was how easy it is to paint a picture that doesn't actually, it's not like the illusion of a reality, right? So you can tell everybody that Massachusetts, like, the world's dying, everybody's on, passing out, hospitals are full, all this stuff. None of it's true, and yet, like, everybody just bought into it. I would have
mhm,
people contact me and say, like, "Oh, Massachusetts, isn't it one of the hot spots? Isn't, like, oh, it must be really, really bad there?" And I'm like, well, what do you consider bad? Like, the news keeps telling you that all these bad things are happening, and that all these people are dying, and all these hospitals are full, but nobody that I talk to knows anybody who directly died of the virus. I know people who work at hospitals, local hospitals in Springfield and Holyoke, and the hospitals weren't full. I mean, it was like
mhm.
they kept kind of hesitating, waiting for that wave that never came. And then now people are talking about, oh, what about the second wave? What about the new strain? I'm like, wait. Let's talk about the first one that never came, the first wave that never came. And you guys are concerned about the second one. It's like, it just baffles my mind or baffles, sorry, but baffles my mind how people can get caught in a lie and yet you trust them again and again and again. And it's almost like that abusive boyfriend, and the girl who keeps saying, well, no, I think he's changed this time, no, I think he, and, well, no, man, like, the government and big pharma, they're guilty until proven innocent, not innocent until proven guilty. So and somebody like you who's really paid attention to history, and you've written about it. I know we briefly, via email, we're talking about some of the censorship on YouTube. And one of the shows, one of the few shows that got ripped off YouTube immediately, I think, is a friend of yours, Kevin Sorbo. When I had him on my show, and for people who don't know, he was in Shadow Ring. He narrated it. It was uh James Perloff. It was a project with Free Mind Films, and it was he's a very outspoken guy, which you don't see a lot of that in Hollywood and with
Right.
movies. And that show got ripped off YouTube. I'm like, I have every other show is with a doctor talking about this topic, and the Kevin Sorbo show is the one that gets ripped off YouTube. Seemed kind of weird, to be honest, but so how have you taken all this with your research of history and looking at it from, like, kind of a historian perspective? Could you immediately see what was going on, or how long did it take you before you kind of put the pieces together?
Well, I was slower on 9/11 than on COVID. It took me about a year to catch up with what was going on with 9/11. That was partly because I was distracted with other things going on in my life at the day 9/11 happened. But I was actually working on a book on 9/11 for I think almost a year, and I was working on it and pretty intensely last March to 2020, when the lockdown came, and I saw that there's no justification for the lockdown. Now, I know I was a registered nurse in Massachusetts for 45 years, retired in 2019, and I knew immediately that you never quarantine healthy people. I said, this is wrong, this is bad, and they're suspending the Bill of Rights, and our governor has no right to overthrow that. That's the supreme law of the land. This is bad. They're moving fast, and you could see Bill Gates in the forefront of this with his record of desiring a population reduction. I said, this is it. They're making the big move. So I wrote a long blog post from my website, which came under fire, and I had to switch to a new website eventually. But the website's article on COVID started getting too long. I realized that people didn't want a real long online post, because more information kept coming in, Ricky, right, about the real facts about COVID. And so then I decided I better make this into a book. And so I actually worked flat out. I mean, morning, afternoon, and night on this book on COVID, which has called COVID-19 Agendas to Come Red Pill. It's 27 chapters covering really every aspect of COVID, the lockdowns, the contact tracing, the vaccines, the agendas, the possible explanations for COVID, the Great Reset, et cetera. And it took me 3 months to write. And the big question in my mind was, well, should I try and put this up on Amazon and risk censorship, or should I publish it on my own? And I figured the best thing to do is do both. So I put it on Amazon, and they didn't censor it right away. And it actually sold over 3,500 copies in less than 2 months on Amazon. And it was a hit there. The customers gave it 92% 5 stars and 8% 4 stars, and nobody ever gave it 3 stars or below. So I was very happy with that. But in the meantime, they did, after 2 months, they did censor it right the night before I was going to launch the Amazon Kindle version. I worked flat out on, I said, we need to turn this to an ebook, right? And so the night before I was going to launch the ebook on Amazon, they censored it, which meant no ebook and no more paperback. But 4 days later, while I was trying to negotiate with Amazon, they said it violated their content guidelines. And I asked them, well, what content guidelines did I violate? Because this book, it has almost 300 endnotes, and everything I say is documented. And they quote Nobel Prize winners and leading virologists, epidemiologists, ER doctors. Everything is from credible sources. And they just beat around the bush, said it violated our content guidelines. They wouldn't specify what was actually wrong in the book. In any event, 4 days after the censorship, my own printing rolled in. So I just switched hats from uploading onto Amazon to being my own publisher, which I've done in the past anyway, going back to the 90s. And the first printing sold out, the second printing sold out. And Amazon had hurt me in one other respect, which was they were acting as initially as distributor for this book. So they would supply it to Barnes and Noble and Books A Million and other marketplaces. But their censorship took it out of there. But I showed it to a mainstream distributor, and when they saw the sales on Amazon, they just snapped it right up. So they got it right back into Barnes and Noble and other venues. And you get the UK Book Depository, which ships worldwide for free. If you're in Canada, you can get it at Indigo. So it's all over the world now available. The only place you can't get it is Amazon. But that's kind of the story on my reaction. And I've on my website, jamesperloff.net, used to be .com, it's now .net because of trouble they were giving me there. You can read updates for this book. I've got about 250 updates on the book. Every time there's a breaking news story that's relevant, I update it. I did a PowerPoint on COVID not too long ago, which has a lot of up-to-date facts, and I've got that uploaded onto the website. And I will have a new blog post coming out pretty soon, within a week or so, which will have a lot of short videos, because I know people are very visual oriented now. I've got a lot of short videos of doctors warning about the vaccine, victims of the vaccine, and that should help as well. So I haven't, even though we got the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming up, I haven't been able to go back to that book yet. I would never get it out by September the 11th of this year. But I've just been so focused on COVID, because that is the 9/11 now. That is the main agenda of the powers that be, the 1%, the Illuminati, whatever you call them. We know that the globalists want to establish world communism under the guise of the Great Reset, and that they want to squeeze our economy so badly with these lockdowns that eventually people will be begging for debt relief and mortgage relief and rent relief, and they'll give us to that in the form of digital ID and social credit scores like they have in China. Be a good boy or girl and get your vaccines, and don't criticize the government on social media, and you'll get a little weekly allowance, which is just, of course, digital money created from nothing. It doesn't cost them a thing. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But that's the priority right now. So that's where all my attention has been for over a year now. If that's where their attention is, that's where our attention should be primarily right now.
Now, I mean, were you aware? Because I know I've read that you think you had some type of reaction to a vaccine when you were younger, right?
Oh yeah.
And was that because of that history with vaccines? Do you think you're already more aware of like how dangerous they could be and all that stuff? I mean, because a lot. What's amazing in the medical freedom community, people who are questioning or skeptical of vaccines or big pharma, a lot of them have personal experiences, and
Right.
so it's not like, hey, I heard this or I heard that. It's like people have, like Brian Festa from the CT Freedom Alliance, Dr. Brian Hooker, who's been on my show. I mean, so many of these people who've been on my show, they have kids who were harmed by vaccines or had some negative reaction. And one, I think that makes them even more motivated to get this information out there. But two, it makes it much harder to debunk, right? You can't just say, it's like, oh, there's no evidence, or it's like, no, there's people who have had personal experiences. Do you mind getting into your personal experience and telling that story a little bit, or?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was from vaccines, but it took me a long time to figure it out. But when I was an infant, and this is going back to up to when I was 6 months old, so I don't remember. I didn't rely on my parents, but I had a rough infancy, and that I had what they call eczema, very severe. My mother said it was like my skin was falling off, and I had fevers, couldn't sleep at night, always seemed in pain. And she kept going back to the doctor and saying, "What's wrong?" The doctor didn't know, and he said, "It must be your breast milk. Put them on the bottle," which is really stupid advice. But actually, it was the DPT shots, which I got at 2, 4, and 6 months. And when they stopped giving me DPT shots, then it went away. But then I got a booster of DPT when I was in the 2nd grade, immediately fever and rash, just like my medical record says eczema like rash. Well, it doesn't hard to figure out what was causing the eczema in my infancy. It was the DPT shot. And when I got another DPT booster at the age of 11, got another rash. I still was not cognizant myself at the time what was going on. Just sent me to see a skin specialist, But my first suspicions about vaccine came in around 1991 when I was working at a major Boston area hospital as an RN, and they called it a very urgent meeting in the auditorium and in rotating shifts. And they said, it's very important everybody gets the hepatitis B shot. Well, 3 doses, and I said, well, why? You can only get it from an uncapped needle, but we stopped using needles by and large. We were on our IVs, we had adapters instead of needles, and every room had a red drop box. You never recapped a needle, and the chances of you sticking yourself with a needle at that point were minimal, and it just didn't make any sense. And they even wanted the housekeepers to get the vaccine, and 3 doses. And I said, why do housekeepers have to get it? They don't even use needles. They said, well, maybe a lazy nurse will leave a needle on the bed, and the housekeeper will be making the bed and she'll accidentally stick herself and have hepatitis B on it. I said, that's ridiculous. And I remember one of our housekeepers fainted from the vaccine. Well, I refused to take it because I said, the chances of getting hepatitis B under these conditions is like 1,000,000 to 1. And I don't see why I should get 3 shots for something that's not going to happen. So that I just, it was a red flag to me. And I said, later on, I got to look into what's going on with these vaccines. And then later, when I started seeing the evidence that it was causing that with the autism rates were skyrocketing from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 50 as they increase the vaccine rate. It's like so obvious. It's like the correlation is so obvious. And then you watch movies like Vaxxed, and you see the parents. And like you say, when you became convinced when you've been affected yourself. So my own experience was a contributing factor, but it's also what I saw in other people. And then when I saw that they were pushing the COVID vaccine, I didn't need any more proof that this is nefarious. And when you look at the population control agenda that's been voiced not only by Bill Gates, but by Zbigniew Brzezinski and Ted Turner and Robert McNamara and the rest of the Georgia Guidestones and Bertrand Russell and the rest of the elites, over the years, that they want to reduce world population to fight from, almost 8 billion now to 500 million. This is the program. An experimental RNA vaccine never used on humans before, never received FDA approval, just emergency authorization. This is it. This is the program. And that's why Bill and Melinda were pushing so hard for it. It's for me, it was a combination of realizing what happened to me. I should mention that I didn't really talk about the effects beyond the eczema, but when I was young, I was extremely withdrawn in my youth, extending to my teen years. I tried to go for a couple of days without even speaking at school. picked on a lot, unable to play athletics with any kind of competence at all. Just in a daze, just in a withdrawn daze for a long time. It took me a long time to pull out of that. It wasn't really, I went through a kind of a detox program around at the age of 30, which really changed things for me physically when you get all of that kind of garbage out of your system. So that was, so that was, part of it. I was what you would have called, today would call what I had low spectrum autism or Asperger's at that time. Very, very withdrawn, very unable to communicate and unable to, do physical work. That kind of thing was affecting me beyond the initial skin reaction and fevers and things like that.
And you think that was the vaccines were the contributor?
Oh, yeah, sure, for sure. No doubt about it. Yeah, and when I got into the detox, and I felt like a new person.
Yeah, but so yeah, and the thing is, a lot of stuff can cause these issues. I mean,
Right.
everything from our quality of food to our environment. So much of what happens in our everyday lives can contribute to these mental fogs and a lack of energy
Sure.
and all these things.
Oh yeah. EMFs, the cell phones, towers, and now they're moving on to 5G now. With they're going to really hype it. With no safety. By the way, FCC has not done any safety testing on cell phones since 1996. They're only 25 years behind the curve. They refuse to update their safety standards, while other countries reduce the. India only allows 1/10 the level of EMFs that the United States does, and will be even much higher than India once we move to the 5G full blast.
Well, I know that the 5G conversation has become very popular in the alternative media community. I don't. I haven't seen any strong evidence, like any actual links specifically to health issues and 5G, but I don't put it, it's absolutely a possibility, because we know for sure people who turn off their Wi-Fi's, people who do these routines where at night you turn off your Wi-Fi's, your cell phones, it helps your sleep, it helps your health. I mean, there's obviously something's going on that we're not aware of, and something's having all these signals and all these things that we can't see, that we kind of just assume is having no effect on our health or our moods or any of those things, our sleep, without a doubt is having some effect. So it's not hard to believe the 5G would also have a similar negative effect on our health and sleep and all that stuff.
Right, and actually 4G, we know from peer-reviewed scientific studies, the current Wi-Fi, or up until now, has caused cancer, heart irregularities, lowered sperm counts, DNA damage. It's peer-reviewed. There's no question about it. So when you hype it even more, the 5G has just been around long enough to be measured in terms of the health effects. But remember too, that 5G operates at very greatly varying levels of frequency and strength, and they haven't turned it up. That they've lowballed us, initially, but when they really turn it on full blast, when they get all those, Elon Musk and the rest of the people who are putting the 5G satellites up, when all the satellites are up there, and they've got all the 5G transmitters, and they're trying to bribe citizens now into putting 5G towers on their homes, which I'm afraid that a lot of broke citizens will go for that. Once we see it in full force, I think it'll be very obvious. But it's just the reason we don't have enough data yet is because they haven't fully implemented it.
Yeah. But James, isn't it important to be able to refresh your Twitter feed even faster than you do now? It's amazing. It's like how much faster do you need the internet to be? I'd be completely okay with just if things never get improved or better. Like I'm content. Like we'll make it work. I mean, I don't need to get my emails any quicker. I don't need to go on social media any faster. It's just the price you pay for progress is just mind-boggling. How people are just willing to sacrifice health and like you said, there's a lack of research because it's so new, and so we don't know, and it's kind of reminds me of the vaccine, right? Like we're just like, hey, let's be guinea pigs and let's just see what happens, and which is a huge issue. And it's amazing now how even things like, okay, so even the 5G thing, similar to the COVID thing or 9/11, all these topics at first are like seem completely unbelievable and hard to believe that there's anything, and conspiratorial going on. And as time goes by, it all becomes revealed. I feel like it's just a matter of time before these things get exposed. And you're seeing now even the inventor of the mRNA technology is doing interviews. Dr. Robert Malone. I mean, he was on
Right.
Dark Horse podcast. He was just recently, I think last week, was on Del Big Trees to High Water.
Right. Mm.
And he's doing all these interviews, and it's just like, uh, in Massachusetts, and I'm curious your take on this, because being in Massachusetts, and Dictator Baker was really taking his time with opening things up and loosening up under restrictions, and with his monotone voice, kept scaring people like, oh, things aren't over yet, we have to be careful, blah blah blah, over and over. And then out of nowhere, it seemed like just overnight, he's like, well, we're going to open everything up next week, and we're going to, and it seemed very suspicious to me. And then you started seeing the mRNA inventor speak out. You saw the Fauci emails being released.
Yeah.
I almost felt like he's like, hey, let's get everybody busy by opening things up. Let people go out to restaurants. Let people go to the malls. Let people hang out with one another. Go back to work. All this stuff. Go to sports events. And then when all this shit gets released, nobody will be paying any attention. Do you think that was the timing was also suspicious?
Well, one thing that struck me was that, we're in the warm weather now. Today is 95 degrees in Massachusetts. The flu season, the winter is always a time for a lot of respiratory illnesses. And I'm a little bit suspicious that they timed the vaccines to be given during the winter. So when the warm weather came and respiratory diseases naturally started reducing due to the warmer weather, they would say, actually, that's the vaccines that did that. And I'm suspicious that when the flu season returns in the autumn, they're going to say that the flu, because they've rebranded a lot of illnesses as COVID, as in all you need to do is get a positive COVID test, the PCR test, as unreliable as that is, to be told that you're sick with COVID, even though you're perfectly healthy. This is the nonsense we've been experiencing. I think that come the fall, Charlie Baker's going to renew the lockdown and claim that the renewed flu season is actually a new COVID variant. That would seem to me the logical plan. But it's kind of hard to maintain the fiction in warm weather. Nobody's hardly anybody's getting sick with respiratory issues right now in Massachusetts. So I guess it's let's open it up for a little while. Maybe letting people get caught up in the normal swing of life took some pressure off of him, and also, as you say, may have distracted us or been designed to let us put our guard down.
Yeah, I've been pondering on that also myself, about how once the warm weather, they did the same thing last year, where in the height of the warm weather, they're like, oh, things are getting a little better and all this stuff. And then once it got colder, and of course around election time, the fear mongering just went to spinal tab 11. It just went, just flying up, and they're just scaring the crap out of everybody. And I'm just like, I don't get it. Like a couple months ago, we're just having barbecues and people seem to be getting better and loosening up, and then all of a sudden they're afraid again in December and
Right.
November. And it just shows how many people don't think for themselves. I'm like, it's like same thing with the mask thing. When they did the mask, when they lifted the mask mandate, like all of a sudden people are like, well, now it's safe to take off the mask. It's like, just because Charlie Baker told you it's okay, you can take it off now. Like last week or yesterday, it wasn't safe, and today it is. It's like, it's so ridiculous. Nobody looks and observes at things themselves and comes to their own conclusion. But I think a lot of it, of course, as you know, and we talked a lot about how it's been this whole topic has been used as just a political pawn to get to get people to turn on one another, for many other agendas, like you talked about, the eugenics agenda, depopulation. I mean, these are all things that are now actually openly discussed with people that weren't really conspiracy theorists. Like now they're like, okay, the depopulation thing starting to make a lot more sense. I mean, you think about the elderly. If you're the government, they're really just a pain in the ass, right? Because it's like, you got to keep them alive, you got to give them a check, and they contribute basically nothing, right? In
At
regard
that point, yeah.
Yeah, in regards to tax money, so if you could take them out, I mean, just think about like it would be a great business move, if you're trying to help the budget and you're trying to get rid of a debt. I mean, it makes sense. But the other thing that was also amazing to me is how all of a sudden the US cared about the elderly. Like we didn't. You go to other countries, like we take care of the old people because they took care of us when they were when we were little.
Mhm.
And in America, it's like the second somebody gets a little sick or they require a little bit of attention or energy, it's like, I don't got time for that. It's like, I got a life to live, I got kids, I got my own priorities. It's like, wait, isn't that your mother or father who took care of your ass when you were younger, and now you're like, the second they become a little bit of work, you're dying to put them in an old home. And then all of a sudden COVID happened, and it's like, we got to protect the old people. It's like, wait, you guys never cared about old people. This isn't about protecting the old people. So that whole narrative was really interesting. How quickly that changed.
Yeah, a glaring example of the contradiction in logic, or the total lack of logic, is like, for example, down in New York, Governor Cuomo wouldn't let healthy family members visit nursing homes to see their family, and he even forbid them to stand outside the window and wave to them. And yet he took sick COVID patients. I mean, Trump sent the hospital ship Comfort to New York Harbor. He didn't send any patients there. He sent them to the nursing homes. I primarily worked in hospitals, but I did do some time in nursing homes. I can tell you, they're not equipped to deal with sick, feverish patients. Now, our protocol in nursing homes was always, if a patient did run a fever, we'd send them to the hospital because it was part of a doctor's order, but you'd almost always get it. So they go to the hospital, get a workup, see with a chest X-ray, urine sample, have it be on antibiotics for 2 or 3 days, IV fluids, and be sent back to the nursing home once the fever went away. But now Cuomo's doing the exact opposite. He won't let healthy people go in the nursing home, but he sends sick people in the nursing home. So how can his priority be to protect them? And thousands of nursing home residents in New York, as well as Pennsylvania and some other blue states, died because of this absurd policy of sending sick patients into nursing homes, which are not, it's the hospitals that are equipped to deal with them, not the nursing homes. And nursing homes don't have the equipment, the training, the isolation rooms, the gowns, for the most part. I can't generalize too much, but to deal with this. So yeah, there's just this has nothing to do with the government caring about us. They haven't cared about us in a long time. I don't want to overgeneralize. I mean, there's some good public servants, locally, but your local town, but on the federal level, our governments have been responsive to APAC and the neocons and the big pharma and the lobbyists and the military industrial complex, and the CIA, the rest of them, for a long time. We're way down on the totem pole when it comes to who they listen to.
Now, somebody like Charlie Baker, for example, and I'll use him as an example because he's local, and we both live in Massachusetts. What do you think was motivating him because obviously he killed small businesses. Obviously he ignored the fact that the PCR test, all these case numbers, was all bullshit, because the PCR test, as the inventor himself said, it's not really a test, and it, you can amplify a cell to find trace amounts of anything. So it's completely useless for that type of thing to find out if somebody's sick or not. And all these, and then obviously the ignoring ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, all these other treatments that doctors all over the world were having success with, and that stuff was suppressed. So even if the thing is, a lot of times people in the alternative media community, we get kind of lumped in with like, oh, you think the virus doesn't exist, or you think all the numbers are bullshit. And it's like, okay, well, there's even more arguments than that, because the numbers are bullshit. And I've had Dr. Scott Jensen on my show, which I know that you're aware of.
Great.
And obviously the numbers have been inflated, but even if you believe the numbers or some of the numbers, there absolutely could have been lives that could have been saved if they weren't playing this whole political strategy game, where the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and all these doctors that were having these treatments that they were having complete success with, were completely ignored. I mean, you talked about Cuomo. Cuomo actually banned prescribing hydroxychloroquine in New York, which is absolutely horrendous and ridiculous. I mean, the fact that a politician is deciding what a doctor can give his patient is crazy. I mean, it's absolutely insane that people weren't completely upset about this. I think it was a No Agenda show that said the best uh, the best thing that ever happened to ivermectin was that Trump didn't didn't support it or mention it. It's so true. Like, I mean, hydroxychloroquine became a political thing. It's like, and the crazy thing, and I would tell people, I'm like, listen, I'm not pro pharma. I'm like, I'm one of the most anti big pharma. I mean, I don't take any medications. I don't go to the doctor. I find natural remedies for everything. I try to strengthen my body so my body can heal itself in almost in regards to just about everything. And I'm like, so I'm not promoting a prescription drug. I'm just letting people know that there's a generic cheap drug that people have been having some success with that is basically, you know, super safe compared to other prescription drugs that people take every day, like statins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and yet it's being demonized because they want the right to fast track these vaccines, because if they had a treatment they couldn't fast track the vaccine.
Right.
So they like all these people made it seem like we're promoting a prescription drug for the purpose of promoting a prescription drug. It's like, no, we're many of us in alternative media community are anti-prescription drugs, but we can see what they're doing, and they're using it as a way. They're demonizing this just as a way to fast track this vaccine because they can't have any alternative treatments, right? Or they wouldn't be able to fast track the vaccine.
That's absolutely correct. And, you know, the Gates people and the World Health Organization did everything they could to suppress hydroxychloroquine. And when they did trials, they deliberately overdosed people with hydroxychloroquine, and they waited until the person was on a ventilator and near death before they started using it. And they said it didn't work and it causes side effects. Well, you have to use it early. Dr. Brian Tyson of California cured 1,700 cases of COVID with no deaths using hydroxychloroquine as an early intervention. And I also quote in my book Dr. Anthony Cardillo and of California, and Yvette Lozano and Simone Gold, who I'm sure you've heard of, all had success treating patients with hydroxychloroquine, and ivermectin is having similar success. And actually, in India, they're actually suing the World Health Organization for lying about ivermectin now, which is good. Of course, you've heard of Rainer Fulmich, the German attorney who successfully sued Volkswagen. He's got lawsuits going in several countries, and one going against the World Health Organization right now for defrauding the public over COVID. These interventions are cheap. They work as long as they're given early enough. And Dr. Peter McCullough, who the cardiologist and is actually the most published man in his field in the world, he gave testimony before the Texas legislature. He's a professor at Texas A&M. And he said that with diseases, you treat them. Why is it with COVID, you can't treat them? The only solution is a vaccine. There are treatments that work, he said, and such as ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and a higher vitamin D level. So he actually made a video on YouTube, and YouTube banned it. This guy's the most published man in his field. He's a distinguished scientist, but there's so many like that. You know, Knut Kwiatkowski, who a very distinguished epidemiologist, and Dolores Cahill, and other doctors and scientists who are, you know, outstanding in their field and highly respected throughout the world, have been censored on YouTube. But Bill Gates, who has no medical training, no medical credentials, he gets to say whatever he wants. And did you ever once hear a doctor, I'm sorry, you once hear a broadcaster and interview Bill Gates and say, Mr. Gates, you're a computer guy. Why are you telling the whole world how we should respond to COVID when you have no qualifications? I've never once heard anybody ask him that. And I've never heard Bill Gates himself ever say once that to resist COVID, you ought to lead a healthy lifestyle. You ought to get exercise and sunshine and fresh air and eat, you know, healthy foods and take some vitamin C and D, the natural things that anybody knows you should do. He says, you know, from his perspective, the only solution is one of his vaccines. You got to be injected. So, you know, it's pretty obvious. And unfortunately, if people are just tuned into the mainstream media, the logical questions are never asked. They're never asked. And there's the big, used to be the big six, now it's the big five that control all the media. And so it's Time Warner and News Corp and CBS Viacom and NBC Universal and Disney. Everything is owned by those five. National Geographic used to be an independent magazine. Now it's owned by Disney. ABC News is owned by Disney. ESPN is owned by Disney. And here in Massachusetts, I looked it up. New England Cable News Network is owned by NBC Universal. The Boston Herald is owned by News Corp. WBZ, which used to be like a kind of a go-to station for news, is owned by CBS Viacom. There's no independent news. And unfortunately, I know people here in Massachusetts, they're pretty smart. They're smart within their own field, but they get all their news information from the mainstream, which is controlled by these five corporations, which never, ever step outside the box and never, ever ask the logical questions that the alt media has been asking all along. There's so many holes in the official statements about COVID, but it kind of has to be pointed out to you. And when guys like you and me come up to somebody and start to point them out, they think, well, you're crazy. I mean, the big lie has been very effective. I mean, they hear it on all the network news stations, the exact same story, with an occasional exception of Fox News. Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson have occasionally taken a courageous stand on some of these issues. But other than that, all people basically hear is the same mantra, and they think that we're crazy because we're asking logical questions, and it's just very difficult. But that's why I wrote this book, because I wanted to give people the full picture. I tried to cover every aspect of COVID and then update it on my website, so that people at least have the information available and have the option to find out the truth.
Yeah, Tucker, I was never, I shouldn't say I wasn't a fan of his. I wasn't a fan, and I didn't dislike him either. But since this whole COVID thing, I mean, he's actually done some really good work, and he's had the courage to interview people like Dr. Scott Jensen and Dr. Robert Malone recently, and to kind of push back a little bit.
Yeah.
And you still, if you see these interviews and you see the way he kind of states his opinions on things, you can see that Big Pharma is still in the shadows, kind of influencing a little bit, because he never says anything, like he's never super open with saying, don't take the vaccine, save yourself. But he definitely will. Well, he walks that line. I mean, he really gets real close to that line, to the point where it's just like, if he just pushes this point a little bit more, he might get canceled.
Right.
But I give him a lot of credit for even getting to that line, and to have somebody like Dr. Robert Malone on.
Right.
I mean, the Dark Horse podcast, like I referred to before, I mean, he gets kicked off YouTube, that episode on the Dark Horse podcast, which boggles my mind, because you have YouTube ads everywhere and people all over YouTube telling you to get a mRNA vaccine, and yet the guy who patented is the creator of the technology. His voice is being banned and censored. I mean, how do you justify that?
Right. And actually, there's another guy who was involved with the foundation of mRNA technology. His name was Luigi Warren. He helped to found Moderna, as I understand it. And he said that the spike protein can be shed. He said that it definitely can be shed from person to person. And I've known people who came down with COVID, and they had been in close contact with somebody who'd recently been vaccinated. And we've had a lot of reports come in of women with irregular periods and other phenomena after being in close contact. And so he appears to be correct, and he is a founder of that technology. And yet after he made that statement, Twitter banned his account. Now, I haven't checked to see if he got it back yet or not, but he was a founder of mRNA technology, and Twitter banned his account because they did something negative about the vaccines. And that just shows you. And of course, the president of the United States was banned by Twitter. And so it's like, you'd think that the average person would say that something's wrong here, when people of distinction and who know what they're talking about, like Dr. Robert Malone, are being censored. It doesn't add up. They're not making irresponsible statements. They're not promoting violence or child pornography, something else that should get them booted off. They're still expressing a different opinion. I should mention that, by the way, that science has always been established through people having different viewpoints. And Edison when he invented the light bulb, had to try 1,000 different approaches before he got it right. About 1,000 different approaches. He acknowledged that he didn't get it right the first time. And so you've got to bring in different perspectives and try out different viewpoints. And yet, YouTube, especially, and also Facebook, and to a large degree Twitter, have been completely intolerant. This goes for crime, solving crimes as well. When you're on a jury in a courtroom, you don't just hear the defense or just hear the prosecution. You hear both points of view, and that's what freedom of speech is all about. The capacity to give an alternative point of view. And these people they're censoring, they're not tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. They're actually qualified MDs, like I mentioned, Dr. Peter McCullough, the most published man in his field in cardiology. And it's getting ludicrous and insane. I know that about a year ago, YouTube was boasting that it actually, I think it deleted over 10,000 channels. I mean, they're going crazy with the censorship. And, there is some pushback now. I know that congressional members of the House are looking into Facebook more closely now, because there's a lot of communication between Dr. Fauci and Mark Zuckerberg that turned up in Fauci's emails, and they want to know just how much Fauci influenced Zuckerberg to suppress, truthful investigation of COVID.
Well, remember the Project Veritas video of the Facebook employee? They were talking about the vaccine hesitant score, like
right.
That's insane. That if you share stuff that is questioning vaccine safety or anything along those lines, then they give you a score. Once you get to a certain score, then they'll ban you or censor you or
right.
whatever. It's like, I mean, that's insane that you can't even ask these questions. I remember News 22, which is a local news station over here in Western Mass. They immediately after the vaccine was released, the first one, they were sharing an article with the headline saying, vaccine just something along these lines, like the vaccine was just released and conspiracy theories about the risks are already circulating on social media, something along those lines. And I'm just like, today, not today, but I think over the weekend, I read that the FDA adds heart inflammation warnings now to Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. So all these things that were considered conspiracy theories not too long ago are now being accepted as things that we should be concerned about. So so again, why the hell is anybody listening to any media when they're the same ones that were calling people who had actual skepticism for good reason? You were calling them conspiracy theorists. You were suppressing their opinions, their thoughts. I mean, you would hear about people who passed away and possibly because of the COVID vaccine. Those stories were completely suppressed. You couldn't find them. I mean, I would go on Google, search for, okay, doctor in Florida passed away. Let me see if I could find that story. Can't find it. Oh, a mother, young mother passes away, and I forget which state after getting the second shot. Can't find that story. I think I ended up finding it on like band.video, Alex Jones's website. And so it was like, why is this information being suppressed? Who are you protecting by suppressing this information? The way I look at it is let everybody see all sides. Like, okay, well, maybe there is some risk, but let us kind of balance out the risk to reward ratio. But I need to see all that information to really clearly see if the benefits outweigh the risks. But if they're only showing you one side of the argument, then you have to basically be skeptical of what their motives are.
And they're owned, like I said, by the big five corporations, the big five media corporations. We no longer have independent mainstream media in America. And so I actually saw an interview, I'm going to be posting it in this next blog post of mine, by a mainstream broadcaster, news anchor, who he just let it slip on the air that they're not allowed to criticize the official story on COVID. Actually, there was a reporter for the Daily Mail in the UK who just did an interview with Rainer Fulmich, the German attorney, where she said that, the mainstream is not allowed to criticize, in her articles, criticizing the official narrative were suppressed in the UK. It's very clear that this is happening. It's really undeniable. And, there's so much distortion of fact. There was there was a huge march around June the 6th in London. It was gigantic, and I saw videos of it. And then the BBC said there were 350 people on this, hundreds, And actually, on the 26th, there was another march in London, and the people, they estimate about 500,000 people, not the mainstream, but they took aerial shots, and the people went on for 4 miles through London. It was about 500,000, but they're going to say it's hundreds of people again. You cannot trust the mainstream media because they are under the thumb of the establishment, which is colluding with big pharma and is part of the agenda that's at the top of this whole power pyramid. And so you're never going to hear the truth of mainstream media. They're going to keep taking this country down. They've introduced so many things. I told people, like when transgenderism was introduced, I said, do you really think that it was the people who demanded that? I mean, how many transgenders are there? Why did Obama issue an executive order for transgender bathrooms? Do you think that a tiny handful of transgender people were able to influence the president of the United States? No, the order came from the top. It's the 1%. It's that they're the ones who are degrading the country and calling all the shots. It's not the American people. There wouldn't have been any transgender orders because most American people don't want that. And that's the reality, is that they control the banks, they control the corporations, they control the military to a large extent, even though I know we have good patriots within the military, and they clearly control the media. And I've got a book on my bookshelf. Probably can't reach it from here. It's America's 60 Families, published in 1937 by Ferdinand Lundberg, who was an outstanding financial journalist. He used to write for the Wall Street Journal and AP, and he was a very distinguished financial journalist. But he said he has a whole chapter called "The Press of the Plutocracy." This is 1937, and he went from coast to coast, and he showed that every major city newspaper was owned by America's 60 families, the 60 richest. There was one newspaper chain, the Howard Scripps chain, which they didn't own, but basically you already had consolidation at that point, but the consolidation is really tight now with just these 5 corporations controlling everything. So people need to wake up to that, and until they do, and until they're willing to step outside the matrix or step outside the box and listen to alternative viewpoints, that they will continue to be dragged down the line until they're in some kind of FEMA camp or they're dead from vaccinations and boosters. And that's, that they have to reach a point. And so we're trying to wake them up. But I think that the good news is that a lot of people are waking up. I heard from a couple who bought a case of my book out in California, and they said that, a few months ago, no one would listen to us when we talked about the problems with the lockdown and COVID, and now everybody listens to us. And and I think this 4-mile march in London is evidence of that. People are seeing through, and you probably heard the story, this is like 2 days ago. Matt Hancock, did you hear the story about Matt Hancock, the health minister? He was caught on a closed circuit television. He was smooching and hugging and groping his aide. He was married, the aide was married, no masks, no social distancing. And this is the guy who was telling everybody in England they had to wear a mask and socially distance. The guys at the top don't do it themselves. And we saw that at G7. They were all hobnobbing, no social distancing, no masks. So the elite don't do it, but they want the public to follow along. But the public has started to catch on, thanks to the internet, despite the suppression by YouTube and Facebook, despite the suppression, the message has gotten out, and more people are waking up and they say, hey, you know what? This doesn't make sense. The narrative is not holding up.
Yeah, my concern is that the propaganda worked so well that so many people in Massachusetts, especially Massachusetts,
right,
got at least one vaccine. And people who, I know people who are super religious, super conservative, super right wing, and they still like, oh, I want to get it just so I can travel, or I want to get it because my husband's high risk, or I want to get it, or I didn't want to get it, but I got it because of this. So many people said I didn't want to get it, but I got it because of that reason or this reason, and I'm just like, most of the reasons can be easily debunked. Because one, I mean, the travel thing, it's like, how about you get this? If you really want to justify, but because you want to travel, then why not wait till it's actually mandated instead of prematurely getting a experimental vaccine? the other thing about like, oh, my grandmother or my husband or my wife's high risk or whatever, it's like, well, you do realize like it doesn't stop you from spreading it. So
Right.
you getting the vaccine's only protecting you, allegedly. It doesn't protect any of your loved ones. So that whole thing is easily debunked. I
Right.
mean, that's my concern, is because there's so many people who got the vaccine and there are no long-term trials. So like we were talking about previously about the second wave and what they might blame it on or whatever.
Mhm.
That second wave might not even be the flu. It might be some long-term health issues because of the vaccine,
Right.
and we won't even be aware of it. We don't know because we have no long-term trials. So people could be getting sick in November, December, maybe because of a lack of exercise, maybe because of a lack of being outside, maybe because of a lack of vitamin D, especially in New England. And it could be a vaccine contributing to that, and people might not even connect those dots. They might just blame it on the second wave of a new virus or whatever it may be. So it's that's the thing. There's so much going on, and there's so many different ways that they could kind of trick the public into this again. I really am concerned that people might fall for it again.
Yeah.
But I have hope, because the same way, like I know that 9/11 was a big part of your awakening, just like it was mine. Do you think this whole COVID 2020 thing will be the awakening for a huge amount of people, and hopefully it'll get harder to trick the majority of the population?
Well, we're seeing the evidence for that in London. I think that people in the city of London seeing a 4 mile long march for freedom, even the people who weren't marching must have at least woken up a little bit and said, what's this all about? The BBC's not talking about it. Even though they surrounded the BBC wouldn't wouldn't talk about it, But you were mentioning even religious people getting the vaccine. I want to mention a couple of just personal experiences. I got a call from a friend who is still a good friend who attends a church I used to go to, and he asked for prayers for two church members. One of them was an older man, and his son begged him not to get the vaccine. He got the vaccine. He was rushed after he got the vaccine, rushed to the ER with heart issues. And a younger member of the same family is now in critical condition after getting the vaccine. And there was a business associate of mine. Good man. I called up his office. I hadn't spoken to him in about 2 months, and I said, can I speak to him? And they said, well, he's unavailable right now. And I said, well, when will he be available? And they said, who are you? And I said, well, I'm one of your clients, And they said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, he died 2 days ago. And I was shocked, because this is a vibrant individual, creative individual. One of in his business, he was one of the top people. And I said, well, I hadn't been in touch for a couple of months. I said, well, the sudden was expected. Well, he died of a heart attack. And I said, did he get the vaccine? They said, yes. And with all these reports now of myocarditis, I've been, on social media, I've been reporting this, and I'll put it on my blog post, but there was an 18-year-old who died, let me see, it was within 12 hours or 2 days he had a heart attack.
Well, what's crazy, people are saying, oh, well, the chances of it are low. Well, you do realize like the chances just went up like 200%. So
yeah, and we've got over 6,000 deaths reported on VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, but that's a voluntary system. That's only a small percentage get reported. We also had tens of thousands of serious adverse events, meaning paralysis, disability, hospitalization. And I'm sorry, the 18-year-old had a heart attack within 48 hours of his second Pfizer shot. And also on June the 13th, Pamela Goodman went public. Her 32-year-old stepson died of a heart attack within 12 hours of getting the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine. People are really dying of serious ailments. Like I say, in my own life, I've known people who have died shortly after getting the vaccine. So this is not getting covered, and there's no coverage of any of this. And you turn on New England Cable Network News, the WBZ, they will not mention it. They're not going to discuss it. Maybe they'll mention the myocarditis, because now the FDA is starting to issue a warning. Maybe that'll make the mainstream news. I don't know, but the side effects are tremendous. I've seen so many reports from Europe, from nursing homes, where as many as 46 people died within a couple of weeks of getting the vaccine, and these were people who were healthy prior to that. And again, no reports in the mainstream news. So it's really Ricky, you and I are fighting a battle for the hearts and minds of people. along with the rest of the alt media people. There's so many of us. They're trying to get people out of the box, out of the matrix, get them to do some little critical thinking. And if they just used a little logic, they'd see that they've been lied to, and just look at who owns the mainstream media and their ties to, and who owns the fact checkers. What a PolitiFact has gotten more money from the Gates Foundation than anybody else. And I know I saw recently something on factcheck.org that they're supported by a foundation that has is heavily invested in big pharma stocks. And of course, Reuters fact checked. Reuters is owned by the Rothschilds, we're at the top of near the very top of the power pyramid, in the banking establishment. So, you're going to hear like lemmings, the exact same story for the fact checkers and for the mainstream media. We just have to wake people up and hope that they have enough common sense to look at these things objectively and come to the same conclusions that you and I have. And of course, if you've been following history outside the box for years and decades, and I've been writing for the New American. I wrote for the New American, started in 1985. I was woken up in 1978 by Gary Allen's book, Done There, Called a Conspiracy, and I've changed my life forever after that. So that's what's that, 43 years. They've been, whether it's 9/11 or the Gulf War of '91, or even go back to Pearl Harbor. I have so many books on my bookshelf about Pearl Harbor, and the fact that Washington had full foreknowledge. The fleet was put in Pearl Harbor against all naval advice, and we knew the attack was coming through cracking Japan's naval code. That's all well documented. Since 1947, it's been well documented. It's documented in the 1946 congressional hearings, but the mainstream press suppressed that story. So, and it's not taught in history books. So there's decades and decades of this going on, of this fight for truth tellers, trying to bring the real story to the public. And we actually have an advantage over those people at the time of Pearl Harbor, because we do have the internet, and we can access information instantly, and we can reach people instantly.
Yeah, I've had the Italian filmmaker who did a documentary 9/11, A New Pearl Harbor on. And one thing that I really liked about his very long documentary, I think it's like 4 or 5 hours, but
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a really good documentary. But he opens it up with kind of showing the parallels of those historical events and 9/11. Just the fact that, I mean, there were whistleblowers, there were people who knew this was coming, and all that type of stuff. So, that's one thing you hear a lot is like, well, how come nobody spoke out? How come nobody said anything if this was happening or that was happening? How do you keep everybody so quiet? It's like, you look at Event 201, it's like, how much more obvious do you need it? I mean, they literally recreated exactly what happened in 2020 and 2019. It's so this stuff is out in the open, and it's quite obvious sometimes looking back, like, oh, okay, they were openly discussing this because this was the plan, this was what they were trying to do. What's your theory on, do you think it was accidental leak, or do you think it was on purpose?
Definitely on purpose. And you mentioned one of the reasons is they had Event 201 in 2019, which was about a bat coronavirus similar to SARS, which is, there's a SARS-CoV-2 we're dealing with now, supposedly. And they included suppression of alternative media through social media control. They talked about controlling the big tech giants. In my book, I quote many passages from Event 201 about suppression of alternative speech and so-called fake news. And also there was the movie Pandemic, a 3-part docudrama that aired in January of 2020. It was also the fact that the Gates people met with Congressman Bobby Rush, who introduced Bill 6666 into the Senate for contact tracing. That was done. They met with Rush before in the summer of 2019, before the COVID outbreak. There were so many indicators of the World Military Games in Wuhan before the outbreak. And the SPARS document and the Rockefeller Foundation predicting an event that would call for masks and emptying out stores and the economy being frozen and temperature checks at doors. And there are so many times that they predicted this. Of course, Fauci predicted that during Trump's administration to be a serious outbreak. and I'm missing one. Oh yeah, Crimson Contagion was a drill by the U.S. government in 2019, where they ran a drill for a flu pandemic originated in China. So many things indicated they knew that this thing was coming. That no, I don't think it was an accidental leak at all. They knew for sure, and Bill Gates always likes to pride himself on. See, I predicted this. Well, of course he's deeply involved with the whole phenomena, with originating in it. That's obvious. He's not a prophet. He's actually a participant in all of these things. He helped fund, along with the World Economic Forum, he helped fund Event 201. So in the Contact Tracing Act before any of this happened. So Bill Gates knew. And the fact that they knew means it was not accidental. It's very clearly obvious. And I think that any objective jury presented with all the facts on this would definitely say the preponderance of evidence without a shadow of reasonable doubt is, yeah, they knew it was not an accident.
Yeah, I've had Mickey Willis, who did the Plandemic documentary on, and I've also had Dr. David Martin, who's in the documentary, and,
right.
and Dr. Judy Mikovich. And, Dr. David Martin, he talks about how you could see all this activity surrounding coronaviruses and people patenting things, tests, and all these things. And you could kind of see that somebody behind the scenes kind of could see something happening in regards to coronavirus and the profits in that type of stuff. So it definitely, there's too many reasons to believe that, like you said, that it was probably on purpose. It wasn't accidental. I mean, I like to be open-minded and still be open to the idea. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe it wasn't. I mean, I either way, I don't think it's nearly as important as how they took advantage of it, and how what all the things that happen afterwards. I really hope books like yours and shows like these and these conversations really help people, because I know like some people have COVID fatigue, and COVID fatigue is not a symptom you get from COVID. It's a symptom you get from talking about COVID. It's right. People get tired of talking about it. But I think that people almost need reminders of like, oh, remember Event 201, remember Cuomo not letting doctors prescribe hydroxychloroquine, remember the suppression of these doctors who spoke out, and those doctors. Like, you need to almost connect all the dots for them, or put all the pieces together, just so, and then they get the whole picture. Because I think it kind of reminds me of that documentary Press for Truth, and how the Jersey women talked about how they ran into the 9/11 website of, and I forget who the researcher is, something Thompson, who basically took all these news articles and all the people who were questioning things and kind of put them in order and put them all together. And like the Jersey widows said in the documentary, they're like, when you see like this little piece of evidence that makes you a little skeptical, but then you kind of move on with your life, you forget about it. Then you see another piece of evidence that kind of makes you skeptical, but then you forget about it. But when somebody puts it all together and you see how many pieces of evidence there is for you to be skeptical, it's much easier to see the bigger picture. And so I think these type of conversations in your book, where you kind of have all these points and you go through all these things and people can kind of see it all together, people can't help but realize, like, okay, you can't deny all these things. Like, maybe you can argue this little point or that little point, but when you get all these points together, like, when does a coincidence stop being a coincidence, right?
Right.
So I think that's it's really important that people get your book, they watch documentaries like Plandemic that put these things together. There's another really good one too called The New Normal. I think it was actually a UK documentary, which you can find, I think, on BitChute and some of the other alternative video platforms, and that's a really good documentary. Obviously, James Corbett has been doing great work.
Yeah.
He's been putting out a bunch of stuff. No Agenda has been doing great work. Del Bigtree at the High Wire. I mean, so many people have been doing a great job fighting this fight, which I think is really important, because James took off for a little bit. He probably
Sorry about that. I forgot to turn off my answering machine. I turned off my phone, but not the answering machine. But they didn't leave a message. We're okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think like there's so many people who've been fighting this important fight, and I think that it's one of those things where these battles, you've been writing books, you've been doing documentaries for a long time, you've been doing interviews for a long time, you've been on my show before once or twice. I know you've been on many shows that I listen to, and we've been fighting this fight for such a long time, and so many people have been stuck in their everyday pattern where they kind of ignore the fact that there's all these other things going on behind the scenes until now. And I hope that a lot of us have been saying this, like, and you said it too, a lot of people have been waking up to what's going on and how the world really works. And I hope this is a step in the right direction. Some enlightening is going to happen with at least a huge portion of the population. I think I heard Del Bigtree on one of his episodes talk about how when he first started in the whole alternative media community, like he and being outspoken about vaccines, like it was like 1 to 5% of people were skeptical of vaccines, or 1 to 5 people, 1 to 5% of the population would question vaccines, something along those lines. And now it's like 25%, or like
That's
almost
great.
30%. So it kind of shows that like it's kind of worked in our favor, all this madness, because it's made a lot of people question something that prior to 2020 they weren't questioning. I mean, a lot of people just assumed that the science was settled, because that's the term they kept telling you, science, the science is settled, that vaccines were safe and effective, and everybody just assumed that. And now, because of 2020, a lot of people who never questioned vaccines are now at least being a little bit more skeptical. So, to be optimistic, I think that's hopefully a step in the right direction in regards to being able to be easily tricked into something like this again.
Right. Yeah, it's backfired to a degree. They pushed the accelerator down too fast on people, and not only were people people had adverse events, and other people had adverse events from the vaccines, but people who've been out of work. I know people have been out of work for over a year now due to lockdowns, some of which have been lifted. But other countries like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, I mean, some of the countries are really, the lockdowns are very severe still.
Canada.
And up in Canada, it's really bad. But when it hits you home like that, that does shake you up and make you start to question. And so I think that they have made a mistake of pushing too fast for their end game of this new reset and global new world order. And I guess they get pressure from the satanic forces above them, our political leaders, to get moving faster. But I really think they've done it too fast. And instead of just boiling the frog like they usually do, and that has served to jolt people awake. So I hope that that awakening continues, and we can continue to reach people. I would love to see the tide turn with the majority on our side, not 25%, but over 50. That would be cool, wouldn't it? To actually have those guys at the top on the run, and we're actually winning the battle. That would be great. So I'd like to stay optimistic. At the end of my book, there's so much negative stuff, but at the end of the book, it's called Hope and Encouragement. I do talk about the doctors, the military people, the police officers, religious leaders, sports athletes who are speaking out against the lockdowns and the pandemic. Because there's a lot of Marat Safin, the tennis champion, has spoken about it. There's a lot of people out there. Chuck Baldwin, famous preacher. A lot of people are awake to what's going on and speaking out and influencing others. And I really would look forward to a continuation of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So to end the show, where can people get your work? What's the best platforms to keep up with you and keep up with what you're doing? Yeah.
Well, my book is COVID-19, The Agendas to Come. Red Pill. You can get it at any place except Amazon. You get it on, again, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or any other online platform, major UK book depository, Indigo in Canada. And I also give away the after Amazon suppressed the book, I decided to make the ebook free, and I've got it in 3 formats. It's in Mobi, Kindle, and EPUB. And when you subscribe to my site, jamesperloff.net, when you subscribe, you automatically get your choice of free ebook, or you can just email me also through the contact form. You don't have to subscribe, and I've given away thousands of copies for free of the ebook version. And the ebook, the neat thing about the ebook, I prefer paperbacks myself, but the neat thing about the ebook is that you can just click on the link and it'll take you right to the original story or video that it was based on. Although some of those have now been suppressed, as you can imagine, if it was, especially if it was on YouTube, some of them are gone now. But yeah, you can get that on jamesperloff.net. And I do have a book updates page there, as well as an article about the whole story of Amazon suppressing the book after it sold so well and got such good customer ratings on their website. That was disappointing to me. The book was doing real good. I didn't mind having it being sold on Amazon as much as I don't like Bezos and the way Amazon has formed a monopoly. But that's it. And I have several other books out. I've written a book called Truth is a Lonely Warrior, which is a primer on the New World Order. And a supplement to that, a companion book, is 13 Pieces of the Jigsaw, which goes into detail and covers some stories that weren't included in 13 Pieces of the Jigsaw. I've written back in '99, I wrote Tornado in a Junkyard, which is a bestseller on the fallacies of Darwin's theory. And actually back in 1988 was my first book, The Shadows of Power, the story of the Council on Foreign Relations, which was the old Rockefeller-Morgan. That was the nexus between the establishment, the 60 families, the rich families, and the American government. And they supplied all the key cabinet level personnel for Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Treasury, and CIA. And that's they're the American globalists, and that's their story. So and all those other books are still available on Amazon. It's just the COVID book that they took off.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, James. I'm glad that you your energy level is high and you seem optimistic about the future. I think this is kind of it is one of those issues where it's constantly depressing, and it's all about the negativity, but there is some things to be optimistic about, and people are wakening up, and hopefully we live to see the day that we're the majority instead of the minority. So
right. Yeah, I mean, actually, the outlook is not that hopeful given everything we see, but I like to concentrate on the good things and the turnaround and the people who are waking up. And I guess just concentrating on doom and gloom doesn't do us any good, or anybody else any good either. It just depresses us, and why not stay positive and keep up this fight. And it's great talking to you today, Ricky. Actually, we're considering talking about an ancient Boston sports mystery, which I think I finally cracked. But it's not just because of sports. I don't watch sports anymore. I know that the established spectator sports is a waste of time, but I used to be a fanatic in my youth, watch the Red Sox and the Celtics, et cetera, and the Patriots. But I did crack an ancient sports mystery. We almost went into that today. And the only reason I was going to go into it because that sports mystery shows that the establishment rules the world of sports, even to the point of dictating who will be the champion in a given season. And that is on my website, the next to the last post that I wrote, the mystery of Denny Galehouse in the 1948 playoffs. But I'm glad we talked about COVID instead. It's a lot more relevant than what happened to the Red Sox those years ago.
Yeah, well, I've done some shows with what was it called? I forget what the author is. The Fix is In. He was the author wrote that. He was on. We did a whole podcast on sports conspiracies and corruption and all that stuff.
That must have been good.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I've done a couple other ones too, but without a doubt, I mean, when you look at like just I'm a big basketball fan. Grew up being a big Celtics fan, and had all the Bill Russell championships on DVD, and when the Celtics sucked for a long time, that was all we had to be excited about. We would talk about how great we used to be, until of course KG and Ray Allen came, and but yeah, I'm with you. I've kind of gone through these waves where initially I loved sports, and then I got out of it because I'm like, this is mindless entertainment. I could be taking this time to learn something, consume some information that could help me better understand myself or the world around me, and really something important, much more important. But now I'm kind of coming around a little bit where I'm like, okay, besides all the political BS that's in sports, it's like, if I could, that stuff drives me nuts. It's like all the just all the social brownie points they try to get from the kneeling and all this stuff. I mean, we're all the majority of people are anti-racism and all that stuff, and I'm not against showing anything just support for one another and all that stuff. But when you know that the kneeling thing and a lot of the political or the racist stuff that was going on in the U.S., the people who were pushing to change the system and to get rid of racism, I mean, they didn't really have good motives. You know, it wasn't because they really cared about minorities or anything like that. It was because they were using the public as pawns, and they were just using us to kind of turn on one another, because it's the whole divide and conquer thing. And
exactly.
But I do enjoy sports in regards to it's something I can enjoy with my kids. It's something I enjoy, and sometimes, like we talked about, this stuff can get very depressing. So to have something to be able to unplug and kind of just get your mind off it for a little bit, I think is beneficial. If it's yoga, if it's arts, if it's writing, if it's music, if it's playing sports, whatever it may be. I mean, sometimes we do need to unplug and be able to kind of find some enjoyment, and instead of constantly just spending so much time in all the negativity, because it can affect your outlook and your mood and your energy and all that stuff. And stress obviously is a huge killer, you know, and it can be very bad for your health. So trying to stay optimistic and trying to find the things that you can be grateful for instead of always looming in the dark stuff, I think is beneficial. So whatever it may be, if it's sports, whatever it may be, I mean, enjoying life. We can't forget that the reason why we're fighting back is because we all do want to enjoy life and have our freedoms and liberties and the right to pursue happiness without any restrictions. To me, like, we can get so caught up fighting for those rights that we don't enjoy those rights. You know, we don't actually take the time.
Good point.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my little rant at the end, just because I find myself doing it. You know, it's really easy to get just so caught up in it, and it's like, wait, what am I fighting for? I'm fighting for the right to enjoy life. So shouldn't I be enjoying life? Shouldn't I also find some time to enjoy life? You know, so it's it really is important. It's important to laugh, love, you know, do the things you enjoy. Life's too short. We don't know how much time we have on this earth. We shouldn't take every day for granted. That's why the whole 2020 thing, like, oh, wait till next year. You know, 2021 will be fine. It's like, wait. Some people don't have next year. Some people don't have, like, you're literally telling us to take not just each day for granted, but taking a whole year for granted. I mean, it was insanity. I'm like, you know, we should appreciate every minute, every second we're on this earth. And for you to just say, let's just call 2020 a wash, it was just madness to me. I couldn't believe people were so willing to do that.
Yeah, it was amazing how obedient population was, particularly here in Massachusetts, although we did have a few protests. And I appreciate what you're saying about enjoying life. You know, that's true for spectator sports to a certain extent. If you're in Boston, you're pretty lucky because all the teams have been winners basically for the last few years. And my wife and I mean, I enjoy a good old movie. And last night, my wife and I were enjoying watching some of Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, which was on Turner Classic Movies. So yeah, so I depart too into those things, and I take time to relax and enjoy something as well. So yeah, I didn't mean to totally demean spectator sports, but I know that, and for the most part, that was intentionally a diversion, sort of a soap opera for men, if you will, to keep us distracted from what they were really doing behind our backs.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I enjoy music and sports and movies, it is, like you said, it is important to understand that sometimes and many times they're tools to that are used to manipulate us or to you know, push propaganda on us. So to be just aware of that and conscious of that, I think is important too. Like, don't we call it mindless entertainment, but some of the elite don't see it as mindless entertainment. They see it as a tool to get a message across or to motivate us, or push us in one way or another. So being aware of that, I think is also important. So but yeah, thanks so much, James. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat, and hopefully we do it again in the near future.
Yeah, Ricky, I was on your show a long time ago. I can't remember exactly what we talked about, but thank you for having me back in. This is the first podcast I've done since March due to a health issue, and it's nice to to be communicating again. And especially with a fellow Massachusetts citizen. I've been on 2 or 3 other Massachusetts podcasts. It's nice to see a few awake hosts here in Massachusetts, along with you, who are aware of what's going on. So as bad as this state is, and as much as we're caught in the thick of the liberalism of the colleges that dominate Boston and Greater Boston, it's really great to have a host like you that I can turn to talk about Massachusetts and the world at large.
Yeah, I mean, Massachusetts is a wild place. I mean, I was getting in debates with people at the gym or so many different places, and it wasn't really debates because I would that would be giving them credit for being informed. There wasn't a debate. They would say something because I wouldn't be wearing a mask, and they would immediately just assume I must be some MAGA right wing whatever, and 2 seconds into the conversation I'm just like, you're so willing to argue about something that you know nothing about. It's like, it was mind boggling how many people disliked people who didn't want to wear masks, or disliked people who were skeptical of vaccines, all because they assumed they were fans of the other political party, and it's like, no, this isn't politics, and Massachusetts is wild. I mean, you go to Northampton, and it is the most liberal place you've ever been in your life. I mean, it is. And the thing is, the crazy thing is, I'm a fan of a lot of liberal ideas. I mean, in regards to, legalization of marijuana, so many people being able to just dress the way they want, do all those things. I'm all for that. I mean, I grew up a metalhead. I used to wear Slayer and Iron Maiden and Metallica shirts just about every day at school. And I mean, that was me. So I was a little bit of an outsider myself. So I relate to those people. I am one of those people. But when such a small percentage of the population is transgender, or or gay, or whatever minority you want to focus on, and yet those people are being pushed onto the TV, in regards to commercials, in the regards to movies and all this stuff. It's like, I'm not anti this, but all I'm saying is, like, this doesn't represent reality. Like, the reality is, like, you're acting like this is a huge portion of the population, and it's a small minority portion of the population. So when people are concerned about their kids being confused, or their kids asking questions, or the youth being confused or asking questions because of these narratives that they're pushing, I think those are real concerns, because I'm going to get worked up because I'm seeing it with my kids, and I can already see my son's only 6 and my daughter's only 4, but I can foresee the issues I'm going to have in regards to trying to explain these things, because you watch anything, and it's like, there's 2 guys kissing, there's 2 girls kissing, there's a trans, somebody who's either a male dressed up as a female, or vice versa, and it's like, all these things are completely okay. But when you're pushing it and constantly, like, force feeding these things to children, well, guess what happens? Children are naturally confused. We're all looking for the clique that we fit in, who we are, how do we dress, how do we look, like, what's our identity? And now you're force feeding all these identities, and they start questioning, like, okay, maybe that's me, and that's why you're seeing all these people get hormone replacement at such a young age, eventually regret it. Well, guess what? If you got a tattoo at a young age, a lot of times you regret it, and that can be covered up. I mean, you get a hormone replacement, that's permanent damage, and it might be for something that is just a phase. So it's like, when you're an adult, if you can tell this topic, I haven't talked much about this topic, but it gets me going. When you become an adult, if you decide to dress up as a dragon every day, I don't care. But just don't tell every child that, hey, you might be a dragon, you should dress up as one too. Like, it's just insane. I mean, and again, this goes into other bigger agendas, which I'm sure you're very much more aware of than I am.
Yeah, well, I knew a red pill doctor. She was a pathologist at a major Boston hospital, and she used to have to examine the ovaries and the breast of girls who had been told they wanted to be a boy, and their ovaries and the breasts were removed, like a children's hospital. She wasn't working at children's, but she got material from there. Just insane stuff that 20 years ago would have been absolutely unthinkable. And yeah, it's an agenda. It's being pushed. There's so many of these agendas being pushed. You can really see the satanic nature of the hierarchy that runs this country from the top. It's not godly people. It's not people who have our best interests at heart. It's people who are attacking us in so many ways, whether it's the vaccines or the wars or the morals or the immorality, I should say. These are not people who have our best interests at heart. So yeah, this is a battle of good versus evil all the way down the line.
Damn it! I was trying to end this podcast on a positive note, and I just
we had some positive notes earlier. Yeah. I mean, we're still fighting this battle, and we also know that God is going to win in the end. The Bible predicts that. So, you know, I at the end of my final chapter, I say, no, the Bible doesn't end with the Antichrist; it ends with Christ returning. So, yeah, we're moving towards that Antichrist-like kingdom right now, but that's not the final word. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a religious person, but I appreciate people. I appreciate how it gives people the ability to look at the bigger picture and ask these bigger questions, more important questions like, you know, what's life all about? What's the meaning of it? You know, because I think, unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of people out there who need some type of scripture or spirituality or something to ask those questions, because if not, they'll just get caught up with the selfishness and a lack of moral type of society that we live in, where it's all about me, and it's all about, like, you know, how do I get ahead, and you don't ask those more important questions of how do I leave the world a little better than I received it. And I think those are important questions, and I think that's also why a lot of spiritual people or religious people, they seem to be able to accept that there's actual evil people out there more than the average person, because when you believe in good, you also have to believe in evil. And I think the average person is just like, you know, the science person, you know, whatever that is, and people who are all like, you know, material, whatever the material world is, that's what it is. You know, there is nothing else beyond that. And those type of people just can't comprehend that there's actual evil out there. But like I always say, I'm like, what motivated Alexander the Great? What motivated Genghis Khan? What motivated Hitler? You think people like that don't exist anymore? You think like all of a sudden we live in a world where everybody's moral, and we've had some incredible enlightening where nobody wants to do harm to large portions of the population? It's like, just look at the wars we've been in, the unjust wars. I mean, we know people are going to die when we start a war. We know when we invade a country, there's going to be, you know, innocent civilians and children and women who are going to be killed, and we do it anyways, you know. So you know, this idea that like people have a hard time believing that there's actual evil in the world, like there's people who intentionally will do harm, I just think they you know, they're a little lost. A little bit is, I think, the help of, or I don't know about the help, but I think, how should I word this, that people who are religious or spiritual, who believe in some greater good, it's easier for them to understand that there must be also some greater evil, and that, you know, and that maybe there is a battle between the two going on. And so I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm not religious, but I can see the benefits of it. And a lot of people who are in this fight with me, including yourself, are religious, and I'm more than happy to stand in that front lines with you, and you know, hold hands and say we're brothers and we're in this together. And I don't care, you know, what disagreements we have, as long as our enemies are the same, then you know, we can have a nice chat over our disagreements, you know, as long as you know, you're on my team and we're fighting again for the same things. So I think that's really important, because I think in 2020 you saw it more than ever, the whole divide and conquer, the getting people to fight about the differences and completely ignore all the similarities we have.
Right. You know, as a kid, I was born in 1951, and I always consider the years 53 to 63 to be America's golden age. And we had no wars at that time, a couple of little military interventions, but nothing significant. And the country was very prosperous in the 50s. And the country was united. There was, you know, Republicans would disagree with Democrats, but there was no big divisions in the country. there was no gay movement, there's no feminist movement to the extent that they were really recognized. I mean, the country was united in its values, and it was essentially rooted in Christianity. It was a really good time for America, and it's gone ever since 63, Kennedy assassination, God being kicked out of school by the Supreme Court, dominated by Freemasons at that time. We've seen America steadily move downhill. It's part of an agenda, no question about it. Yeah, there's definitely good versus evil going on. Yeah, I would agree that people of a spiritual character, be they Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, Muslim, they do recognize good versus evil. And I think that that's something that people do need to be aware of, the distinction, the definability of values, good versus bad. I think that that's something that people are prone to, but I think it's in as much as the Bible says God is made in the image of man, I think everybody has that within them to make that distinction.
Yeah. I mean, I think without spirituality, without religion, I think the average person has a hard time believing that evil exists, and pure evil. They think that, oh, it's just people who just happen to make a decision that turned out poorly. It's like, no, there's actual people out there who want to harm others or want to control others, and they knowingly attempt to do it. And so yeah, it's a wild world we live in, and it is a fight that has to continue fighting. And I'm hoping that a lot of people who kind of ignored these fights, these little battles we're having, are much more open to these ideas and alternative perspectives to the world. And I know it's hard to digest at first. It's hard to like I always say, it's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. And it's not my quote.
Right. Very true.
Yeah, but it's just, there's a lot of people who've been tricked that I think because of 2020, it's a little bit easier to convince them that they've been tricked, so
Right.
But yeah, we'll have to touch base again, James, in the near future. If I'm ever in the Boston area and you're up for it, maybe we'll grab a coffee or
That'd be great. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
there's always a lot to talk about. There's no shortage of conversation topics right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's like a pro and con, right? There's the good thing is there's always something to discuss. The bad thing is it's always something negative to discuss.
Yeah, there's a lot of fixing this world needs right now. A lot of repair work and in the hearts and minds of men.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, I'm glad you're feeling a little better, and hopefully we can chat again in the near future. And I'll send you the show once it's up, and I'll also put links to your website and your book, and all that stuff in the show description. And I'm sure we'll chat again.
Okay, appreciate it, Ricky. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Take care.